Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. Crocs. I've got no rhythm today. I'm going to do something I rarely do, which I'm going to make a video, but I'm going to pause and it won't be cuts exactly or edits, but I'll just pause while I go and get books because I didn't go and get them all before. Because I've got a whole bunch of books that I've had sitting around. I haven't shelved them because I wanted to talk to you about them and I haven't got around to talking to you about them. So I'm just going to go through and mention all the books that I've read mostly in the last 6 months that I haven't got round to talking about here. So I'm going to refer to Goodreads and I'll see what I've done. I probably won't go and get all the graphic novels. I may mention them, but I'm going to just go and show you and hold up each of the books that I've read because then I can finally take them off the bench at the side and shelve them. Some of them I have shelved, some of them I haven't. So here's what we're going to do. Let's start way back when. I'm going all the way back to last year and I'm going to go and get the first one. So Yeah, I'm back. I don't have it. I've already lent it to someone. It was the fourth in the Richard Osman Thursday Murder Club, which is called The Last Devil to Die. Great. If you haven't read Richard Osman, you should. If you like cozy, if you like good detective stories, he's very funny, and the stories completely work, and they're fantastic. Okay, let me see what's next. So after that, I read The Vaster Wilds, which I think I did a standalone review, Lauren Groff's book, which I loved, and then I read the new Adrian McKinty, the new Duffy. So one second to show you. This is the first 6 Duffys, which I bought in paperback mostly second hand. And he didn't write one for a year. One second, when was the last one published? I could tell you now, maybe even 10 years ago. One second, that was published in 2017. And he had a new one out this year called The Detective Up Late, which I bought in hardback. And don't think it was as good as the ones I remember. So we're promised like 2 more of these. Ping, ping, promised 2 more of these. Adrian McKinty, and I'll still get them, and probably in hardback, although maybe I'll wait for the paperback next time. Okay, that's that. Let's see what's next. Hold on. Okay, after that, I read Imaginary Homelands by Salman Rushdie, which is an essay collection, Essays and Criticism, 1981 to 1991. Terrific. Authors that I've read, a novelist that then go back and publish their literary criticism. I find I can read them like this in these whole things. I've read Martin Amos's The War on Cliché, and I was inspired to pick this up because I was sent free his latest one, which I haven't read yet, which is Essays 2003 to 2020, Languages of Truth. And so I had that. So I bought in Edinburgh Step Across the Line, which is 1992 to 2002. So that's the second one. And then I bought this off eBay. So I've read this one and I'll get to these other 2 collections. What the flip is people pinging me? And I'll get to these other 2, but really good if you like essay collections, if you like, just great writers writing about modern culture and putting their ideas down, then Rushdie is of the best that we have. And looking forward to getting to these 2. And then he's got this a new work, non-fiction work about the attack on his life coming out, I think, any second now, if it's not out already, called Knife. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm going to read his essays first. Really enjoy that. Salman Rushdie, thank you. One second, and let's see what's next. So after that, I read Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I'm trying to read through James Baldwin. I've dipped in and out, but now I'm gone back and trying to read them in publication order, which allows me to, I think, flip between his fiction and non-fiction. So anyway, Giovanni's Room is a novel. It's an astonishing novel about a white man in Europe, something that James Baldwin was not, but his experience and his ill-fated love affair with Giovanni. Beautifully written. I have got nothing I can say to add to people's understanding of what a fantastic writer James Baldwin is, and to still have his work to discover at this point in my life is fantastic. So I'm really enjoying that. That was Giovanni's Room, this lovely edition. I don't think it had ever been read that I picked up on eBay. And then after that, I already went and got the next book. But I said I wouldn't. Every time I speak, someone's going to send me a WhatsApp message. I'm sorry for the pinging. Monsters by Barry Windsor Smith, which is a giant thing. I think I got this half price. This was £25. I'm sure I didn't pay £25 for it, but it's something I wanted to. Barry Windsor Smith, who people will know from Conan if you watch Steve Donahue and Michael K. Vaughan talk about. Michael K. Vaughan, is that his name? Talk about Conan, which I'm not a big fan of Conan, but Barry Windsor Smith sort of made his bones on Conan. And this is a standalone, massive hardback graphic novel that I was excited to read, black and white. I mean, this is the intricacy of Barry Windsor Smith, who I probably first came across, did some work on X-Men, and then I really got to know he was writing on Valiant. That's when I was collecting in the early 90s and those Valiant comics, Archer and Armstrong and similar. And one of the things with Barry Windsor Smith is some of his faces kind of look the same. Men and the women, they've got the same shaped faces and the same style, but I don't mind that. But this was, yeah, kind of intriguing and a bit odd, not wholly satisfying, but it's a great big thing. I don't know how he must have spent a number of years working on this, and I'm not sure how well this will be remembered, because the story itself, despite the beautiful artwork, is fairly pedestrian and things we've seen before. Monsters, and monsters as a metaphor. There are real monsters and there are imaginary monsters, and people who themselves are monsters, even if they don't appear like monsters. Yeah, you get it. We've seen that kind of thing before. Okay, what's next? Again, have the next two ready here. Peril in House by Agatha Christie, which I read. This is back in November now. The latest, or I think the 6th or the 7th in the Poirot books in publication order. That's the way I'm working through them, and always great. Each one of these has been a joy. They're a quick read. I get through them in a shop's afternoon, and they're very good. And after that, I read Claire Keegan. It's terrible, doesn't show up very well. Claire Keegan, Antarctica. So this is an earlier short story collection. We read small things like these. I read Red Foster, and I read whatever the little thing was that she came out with last year, and I thought I wanted to go back and read some of the earlier stuff. Nothing beats Foster for me with small things like these, a close second, but this was great to see some of her earlier work, although perhaps understandable why this, short story collections are such a tough sell, and I can see perhaps why this wouldn't have been the breakout work. But having decided that I'm all in on Claire Keegan, to go back and read some of this earlier stuff and get some context has been is great. So Antarctica by Claire Keegan. Let me see what's next. Okay, now we're up to December of last year, and I have Why We Die by Mick Herron. Mick Herron, famous for writing the Slough House series, starting with Slow Horses. It's now been made an Apple TV show. All excellent. Mick Herron's going to show up again a little further down the while. This is an earlier series that predates the Slough House series, and this is Zoe Bohm as a detective in Manchester, I believe, and this is the third in the Zoe Bohm series, and I've got the fourth one still to go. After that, I read Erasure by Percival Everett. And I read it before I then saw the movie American Fiction. Both are fantastic. I don't think I really spoke about it. I've lent it now to my mother-in-law, I think, as my copy of Erasure. Fantastic. My favourite of the Everett so far. Well, no, The Trees is my favourite. But having decided after The Trees to read more Percival Everett, Erasure is the perfect justification for taking on such a project. Fantastic, fantastic. And after that, I read Brideshead Revisited for the first time by Evelyn Waugh. And I've spoken before about things that were big when I was young. So the TV series was in the 80s, and it's the kind of thing my parents would watch, and I would never watch anything like that. So, relegated to the world of mums and dads for many years. Despite the fact that we read a bit of Evelyn Waugh in school. We read Decline and Fall, I'm pretty sure, read Scoop, and maybe even The Loved Ones. But I'd never read Brideshead, and I read this, and it's just transcendently exquisite, beautifully written. It's partly about a world I know nothing about. The whole thing is about Catholicism and the way Catholic beliefs inform and enhance, and in some ways make their lives beautiful, in some ways make the lives of these people difficult. But in the end, one of the lead characters turns back to Catholicism on his deathbed. No spoilers. Well, there's a bit of a spoiler. But just everything unexpected. I thought I knew this story. I thought it was about the Anthony Andrews character Sebastian Flight, and it's really much more about Charles Ryder. And Sebastian is a character that shows up very much in the first third of the book, and then is off the page for most of the rest of the book. But exquisite, really good. If you haven't read Brideshead Revisited, this was an absolute treat and highly recommended. One of my favourite reads of last year. Okay, I'm going to put you on hold again. So next up we have another work of detective fiction. I'm working my way through the Longmire mysteries, and this was Junkyard Dogs, which is the 6th. I have the first 5 there, so that's where I'm up to so far, and I've got a bunch more already in my TBR that I own. I think the next I'm going to read number 7, which I don't know what it's called, Dry Bones maybe. Anyway, Longmire, again, so far out of something that he's a sheriff in Wyoming, and there's humour in these and good mysteries and yeah, good stuff. It's not. I don't think they're cozy, even if they aren't terribly gory or anything. It's just they're great. Highly recommend Longmire if you. Hard to find. Probably easy to find in the States. Difficult for me to get hold of, and I just local in my small suburban town, someone had sold off a whole lot of these exact editions, and so I was able to buy a bunch in one go, which is what I did. Which I've got a few sitting up. After that, I read Letters Descend by Jesmyn Ward, which I think I did a standalone review for, and after that, I read The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride, and I've lent my copy, maybe also with my mother-in-law. I've already lent it to people and had it back from people, which I think was my favourite reader last year, and I have not done a standalone review of it because I kept lending it out to people. It was my first James McBride. I absolutely loved it. It is a book for our time because it is a book that the stakes remain low. It's a book about kindness. It's a book about communities living together and respecting each other, and a wonderful plotty story that I really loved. I fell in love with the Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, and I highly recommend it. It was probably my favourite read of 2023, which was a tough year all round for a number of reasons. And if you haven't read it, it's a good chance it might win a Pulitzer Prize or something like that in the near future. But I don't think some people found it a little bit long. Like, it didn't win the Tournament of Books, which just finished, and the book that did win, which I've also got, I'm going to show in a second, I don't think can hold a candle to the Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. But everyone I've lent it to has loved it for all the reasons I've said. It's just gentle and kind and about people being good to each other. And I don't think we can ever have too much of that. Okay, let's see what's next. A couple more here. The next one was the sixth Maigret. This is a Simenon. Maigret and the Yellow Dog. Originally was called something in French. One second, let's get this right. This is a translation of Le Chien Jaune, the Yellow Dog, rather than Maigret and the Yellow Dog, just the Yellow Dog in the original French. This is an edition I picked up in Edinburgh last June. The Canadian edition, maybe. Hard to tell. And I'm not too bothered about different translations and different things. I'm just working my way through them as and when. I've got a couple more lined up, and I'm doing this roughly at the same pace as Poirot, and good for the next 20 years. After that, this backlist book, Maxine Hong Kingston's The Woman Warrior, which I never read, but I was aware of this book. I think one of the early first novels that I read when as I sort of was buying for myself was Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, and this was definitely mentioned. This is from 20 years before that. It was mentioned in the same breath, and it's actually a memoir, and terrific, really, really strong stuff in this. Where did I get this book? This book belonged to my son's mother-in-law. And she was selling up her apartment and left a whole box of books out on the street for people to come and get them. And my daughter-in-law said to me, "My mum's getting rid of a bunch of books. Run if you so." And I went and picked this up. So that was so thank you, Iris, for that. The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston, terrific. And this is from the 70s. This is like 50 years old now, but I really held up, I think. Copyright 1975. Okay, let's see what's else. After The Woman Warrior, I read a couple of books which I reviewed. So this is now taken back to December when I was in England. But I've already done a video about Britney Spears and Open Throat by Henry Hoke. So that's what I read next. Then after that, I read Shy this is the third sort of novella by Max Porter that I believe I've got half price. So that's the thing. And as after I've already read Griffith, The Thing with Feathers and Lanny. I seem to have all of them in hardback, but they're nice little accessible. Shy was good enough, I would say. The least of the three so far, and I haven't read the Francis Bacon one. I don't know if that's a full novella, but I will still carry on reading Max Porter because I like what he does. And after that, I read Big Swiss by Jen Began. This was, I think, just over New Year's I was reading this, and I really like this. I know there's been a few reviews on BookTube recently because this was part of the BookTube prize, so a few people have reviewed this. I thought this was a big swing for Big Swiss and mostly successful. It's just that the framing is great, the humour is great, the pathos is all there. I really thought this was a terrific read and very different to perhaps some of the other contemporary literature that I've been reading recently, which made it successful. Big Swiss by Jen Began, recommended. Let's see what's next. So after Big Swiss, I read North Woods by Daniel Mason, which I've lent out now, which I think I did a standalone review on. And I think after the Heaven and Earth Grocery Store was probably my second favourite read of last year. And then two books to which I really can't do justice. in a review this short, but the first one was Blackouts by Justin Torres, which won the National Book Award last year and just won the Tournament of Books, beat the Heaven and Earth grocery store in the final of the Tournament of Books, and didn't wholly work for me. So I was, first of all, I much prefer this edition as like an all black edition in the US. This is, I think, this is the UK, and I got this on eBay at a good price. Just didn't wholly work for me. And I found it a bit disappointing. I know people have raved about this. I say it won the Tournament of Books, which means enough people raved about it. It's queer and well constructed, but just found it didn't all come together for me. So I was a little disappointed in Blackouts. But then the other book which I read, which took me 2.5-3 weeks to get through, because it is a monster. My Name is Barbara, which I loved every single second of my time with Barbara. I managed to get hold of the audio, and I don't read or listen to audiobooks, but after I finished this, I found a copy of the audio, which is Barbara herself narrating her autobiography, and there are musical cues, I think, which perhaps I could have benefited. Maybe one day I'll sit down and I'll have it on the car for a long car journey. But just spending this time, these 1,000 pages with Barbara Streisand, I mean, yes, she talks a lot and drops an awful lot of names, but she's kind of done everything, and she is incredibly amazing and talented. I guess the big surprise for me is I'm a fan of Barbra Streisand. I like her movies, and I went to see her in concert. Paid more money than I've ever paid to see anybody in my life. My wife and I went to see her when she was in Israel. But what I didn't know about her was that she always saw herself as an actress. And despite the fact that she has one of these all-time top 5 voices, with Karen Carpenter and Aretha Franklin and Ella Fitzgerald and Nina Simone, one of these distinctive, beautiful, God-given gifts, she sort of doesn't really have a whole lot of respect for her voice, and she sort of relates to it more as a storytelling tool, that she thinks that was her gift, in being able to use the voice to tell the stories in the songs, and that's what made her stand out. That's kind of a brief takeaway from all 1,000 pages and she loves her husband James Brolin and her son. I love Barbra Streisand. I loved hearing these stories. I loved hearing the struggle to be taken seriously as a filmmaker, and that's real. Even though Barbra Streisand is already the greatest human being that ever lived, this idea that she just wasn't being given the credit for writing, directing, starring in movies, from Yentl to The Prince of Tides, The Mirror Has Two Faces, all great. I saw all these movies, and when she was just an actress in perhaps the greatest comedy of all time, What's Up, Doc, we fell in love with her. She was the most exquisite creature, and I love Barbra Streisand. I don't care what you think of her. The book itself probably is for fans more than anybody else, but I loved it. What else we got? Hold on, let's see. Okay, I think we can go right through to the end now, because I've got the whole stack of the remaining books here to talk about. So next up is another Mick Herron. This is The Secret Hours. This is his most recent novel. This was billed as a standalone. Spoilers, if you don't want to know, I'm not going to spoil the whole book, but I don't think this qualifies as a standalone. If you've read the Slough House books, if you have any love for the characters in Slough House, I'm sure you could come to this without having read any of those, without having seen the TV show. But if you have read them, if you're a fan of the show, go read The Secret Hours. This is everything about reading genre fiction, everything about reading a series with recurring characters. This is why I've been doing that for 30, 40 years. This is the payoff. This is a novel which hides certain characters with whom we've become very familiar over a series of 7 or 8 novels, and a TV series, if that's what you want. Hides their identities because we're in the world of spies, and spies don't always use the same name in one operation as they've used in another operation. And this tells a story which reveals itself over time to be about characters that we have met before and that we know, in ways that are devastating, heartbreaking, in ways that fill in backstory of characters, the backstory of these characters that we follow all the time without knowing that backstory. And then this novel, which it was billed as something completely different, suddenly turns out to be the origin story of, or part of the origin story of some characters that we know and love. And I've already said too much, so apologies. But if you read any kind of genre fiction, spy fiction, or you like reading series characters, this it was just about as much joy as I could have reading something like this. So Mick Herron, I don't understand why everyone is not reading Mick Herron. I think he's one of the great contemporary novelists. And if you read genre fiction, if you like reading series fiction, then this is about the most satisfying thing you could possibly come across. Secret Hours by Mick Herron. After that, I read Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zhang. This is the what Americans, I believe, would call sophomore novel. Her second book after How Much of These Hills Are Gold, which I really liked. I thought it was a really strong debut. This is a kind of speculative about a world where everything's turned to shit, but it's also very foodie, and so the narrator is taken off to this alpine village where she is going to is going to build the culinary experience of the elites of the elites, while the rest of the world suffers and doesn't have access to food anymore, and there's smog everywhere. And the framing was it's well written enough. I don't really see quite what this, I think this is going to have to end up being a pot boiler in Zhang's career, but I'm interested to see what she does next, because she can write. She also has the best author photos since Donna Tartt, and interesting, but not terribly consequential, I think. But that was okay. Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zhang. After that, I read Deborah Levy's Almost Blue. I read a novel of Deborah Levy's before I read the autobiographical trilogy. I didn't love the novel. The trilogy made me fall in love with the author again. So I picked up this novel. I picked up half price in London over Christmas. And it's good, and it's weird, and it's about doppelgangers, which seem to be a kind of a thing. So it's about identity, but there's also about music. So yeah, there's this thing that these books talk to each other as much as this is really a woman who wants to. This not a woman. This is an author wanting to write about food and make it a novel. This is an author wanting to write about music and have it part of a novel. But we all contain multitudes, and we know one thing. So why not? But it so happens I'm not that interested in food and don't know a whole lot about music, and so these didn't necessarily thrill me in the way that they might other people. But good enough. I'm not sure if I'll pick up every Deborah Levy novel as it comes out, but this was great. Almost Blue by Deborah Levy. Then a book I was even probably more excited for, Emma Cline's The Girls. I loved. Sorry, The Guest. The first debut novel was The Girls, which is up here somewhere. And then I didn't read her short story collection, Daddy, but if I find that cheap, I may go back and buy it, because this is her second novel, The Guest, which is creepy and ethereal and sort of a drug-addled tale of millennials, a generation that I don't fit into and don't really understand. But something about this is so current and real and identifiable, and I highly recommend The Guest. Not quite as great as The Girls, which I think is one of the great fictional debuts of the last 10 years, but I'm really excited to see to follow Emma Cline's career for as long as I am able. The Guest by Emma Cline, just make you feel uneasy in the best way. And then after that, I finished I did a video about the fact that I'm going to be reading these every week. So I finished Jonathan Sacks's book on Exodus. So every week, in line with the week that particular portion is being read in synagogues around the world, I read the relevant section in Jonathan Sacks. This is Covenant Conversation, Exodus, the Book of Redemption. So I finished that, and I've since started. We're in Leviticus now, and this is Covenant Conversation, Leviticus, the Book of Holiness. So I'm reading that, and then the book that I'm the non-weekly reading book that I'm reading just to get through is Number Go Up by Zeke Fox, which is about cryptocurrency, and very easy breezy read. I didn't get the Michael Lewis book about Sam Bankman-Fried because they weren't discounting it very much, but I picked this up for half price. There he is, Sam Bankman-Fried there, who's, I think, since this book came out and since Lewis's book came out, has since been sentenced to 25 years in prison, and this is about crypto hysteria and accessible even for an idiot like me. And that's what I'm reading right now, and I'll read that over Shabbat, and then maybe another Longmire, and then who knows what, maybe I'll finally get to learn. Oh, The Duke's Children I've just read. I did a whole thing on follow. That's what I read after The Guest, and now this, and who knows what's coming up, and this has to be long up, and that's covering everything that I haven't really spoken about. And there's a bunch of graphic novels there, but read a bunch of Deadpools, a bit of Squirrel Girl, and other stuff as well. But that's more or less everything that I've read that I haven't spoken about since I was being more diligent at keeping up with this, and that may be made into one great big video. And apologies for that. Take care. Bye.